seasonal affective disorder is a mood disorder, and it's sort of on a spectrum. So there's a very severe one, about 7% of the people get it, and then there's a bunch of other variants. The least sort of severe is winter blues, which a lot of people get. The causes, it looks like there's been some really interesting discoveries in the circadian system. So you have a clock in your brain, a 24-hour clock that runs deep, deep, deep inside your brain. It's considered the master clock, and what they've discovered is there's actually clock genes that drive the timing mechanism in this. And it turns out that not only do you have this master clock, but you have peripheral clocks all over your brain and body. So your stomach, your liver, different parts of your brain, and so that master clock is sort of setting those other clocks. And if there's a desynchrony between the master clock and those clocks, you can have problems. So one of the ideas for SAD is that that master clock is sending an aberrant signal to things like the serotonin system. So we know serotonin is a neurotransmitter that is involved in depression. And it seems like that circadian clock can modulate that system. So in normal people, when it gets dark in the winter, that serotonin system gets modulated in some way. It doesn't get modulated in patients with SAD.
Would that be primarily like genetic predisposition?
Yeah, excellent question. So it seems like people with SAD or seasonal affective disorder have gene polymorphisms in those clock genes, not just in the master clock, but in these peripheral clocks as well. So there's probably problems with the clock genes, there's probably problems with the way that it controls serotonin, but there's also changes in things like the eye. So the eye has receptors for light that go directly to your clock and set that clock with the light. So when the light changes in the winter, that system those people are more sensitive to that change than normal people. So as soon as you sort of challenge the system, that gene malformation is detected and has some impacts.
And would that be why something like a seasonal affective disorder light, they have special lamps, would support that?
That's right. So most of the evidence right now is a combination of light therapy. So you would actually buy a light, and you would, as soon as you get up in the morning early, you would blast it while you're eating breakfast and try to have it at work. Plus, a lot of those people would also have to have some kind of serotonin, increase their serotonin tone with something like fluoxetine or some antidepressant medication. There's other things too that we believe are important. Exercise. Also being very strict about your circadian system. So you wake up at the same time every day, you maintain light, you don't have light at night, you don't eat food after dinner because that can actually reset your clock. So those kinds of things can really help.
Interesting. And so is there, it sounds like routine is really helpful.
Very important.
So light in the morning first thing, when would be like ideal times to exercise, and maybe talk about screens if you know anything about how that affects things?
Yes, so waking up, so people have a chronotype. And so some people are evening people, some people are morning people. The people who are evening people tend to have SAD more, and they tend to have a lot of other associated problems. And we think that there's some link to that circadian clock. So it's difficult for those people to sort of modify their behavior because that's the way their clock is set up. But light therapy can certainly help. Around your house, you have to make sure, so if you have to get up in the night to go to the washroom, for example, you have to do not turn the light on because you will set your clock. You'll assume it's morning, and all of those biochemical pathways will be activated. So, little dim lights throughout your house that allow you to do that. Don't eat at night, exercise, all of that stuff. And obviously now our world is so against the circadian system because we're working late at night, lots of light from television screens, phones. So you need to probably get those apps that you can get for your phone that reduces the blue light, and that's the one that activates your clock. And try to keep the lights dim at night, as dim as you can.
And so, like those tips, I thought of it when you mentioned the lights going to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Does this go for everyone? Or I know you're primarily talking about people with SAD, but those habits eventually contribute to someone developing SAD?
Yeah, so I think the tighter you keep your circadian system, the better. You're going to be more resilient than someone else possibly. So the people with these gene polymorphisms, if everything's the same, they're going to be fine. As soon as you start challenging the system like that by turning the lights on, they're going to be affected much worse than you would be.
Interesting. And so same goes for those habits of like eating late at night, all that. If you stop doing that,
That could help,
it can
absolutely.
would you say it could reverse?
Yeah, absolutely. It can have impacts, for sure.
Awesome.
Even exercising can have impacts. Diet, so avoiding, lots of carbohydrates and high fats and things like that. All of that stuff feeds back to the clock. We originally thought the clock just sent out its signals to these other systems and that was it. But these other systems are sending information back about what you're doing. And it doesn't like certain signals at certain times of day.
Yeah. Wow. At the beginning, you said 7% of these people have a
The most severe.
The most
yeah.
severe. And so with someone maybe who's experiencing some symptoms of depression over the winter, what would be kind of a first step in identifying where they would fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, so if it's very severe, you would need to go to a doctor and get medication because it's essentially major depression. It is full-blown depression, very serious. If you're feeling those symptoms, you can go to a doctor as well and they can screen you for certain things. And if it's probably just this moderate winter blues-like version, I think all of the things that we've talked about would have a huge impact. The light in particular probably will completely reverse it.